Isaiah chapters 26 to 30 today, which continues the theme of this stuff being sort of deeply profound and really interesting. Really hard to read, but I mean the whole thing is hard to read, but this bit is in particularly so. It starts out with a big song, a song that doesn't sound like it's supposed to be sung until after the events of chapter 25 have happened, i.e. after the judgment and things have all gone on. It's a big old celebration, that sort of thing. But in it actually talks about the fire that will consume the wicked when they are shown grace and reject it. That's particularly interesting. I mean, because it's a weird sentence, but within that is that they will be shown that grace. So it's not like anyone goes to the fire of hell, presumably metaphorical fire. I think nothing sounds like there's actually a fiery hell yet so far. But people will be shown something else first, so they almost like you do make a choice. So I guess there's got to be careful of that idea, because it sounds like you could live how you like, get to judgment, and I can show you this grace if you like, and if you don't reject it, it's all okay. Which would be, there's a justice issue there, I suppose, but it's interesting anyway. It also talks about the dead will live. Their bodies rise from the dust as the earth gives birth to her dead. Yeah, I mean, all of this stuff is tying together in that same idea that it's a physical afterlife, but we do have to die first, and then we come back to life. So, and obviously we have to die first. But yeah, dead, buried, seemingly everything clears out, then we come back, something like that. It's interesting how consistent it is in this. It's clearly that the Plato idea that its spirits go out of our bodies and go off to somewhere off in the sky is clearly not biblical. But either way, it doesn't make that judgment part sound like a great deal of fun. But there we go, we'll have to deal with that as we go. It talks also about in the day that God will slay the monster of the sea, which it indicates is a leviathan. I assume that's metaphorical because there isn't one, is there? So, yeah. I don't know if maybe there was, but I mean, certainly like the dinosaur monster type things, long gone at this point. So I don't think it's any suggestion that there's an actual monster living around in the sea, but perhaps just an assumption of it, which would tie into the metaphorical idea that people just sort of assume that there's out there and bad stuff's going to get killed, or I don't know, something weird like that God's going to do. Let's talk about the Ephraimites, who are referred to as always being drunk. It does list a lot of other things they're doing wrong, but God is not happy with them, and it seems that you could characterise these by their drunkenness. And one of the things is singled out as being their problem is the empty worship, whatever it's called, worship based on human rules that they have been taught. So again, that idea that you don't just get to go to church once on a Sunday, tick a box and go to heaven. There's some sort of warning not to go to Egypt for looking for Pharaoh's protection. And it sounds kind of like we've got two powers. We've got the Assyrian, Babylonian sort of Persian thing going on, and then Egypt on the other hand. It's not obvious why the Israelites would want to go to Egypt for protection, given they ran away from there in the first place, but I guess that was a long time ago. But this is a warning, don't do that. Again, it refers to the Pharaoh as Pharaoh. And this sort of bugged me a little bit in the Exodus story. So why wouldn't you not give the Pharaoh's name? But then it occurred that maybe Pharaoh is the way we would use the Pope. You don't generally refer to the Pope by their name. And I don't know the name of the Pope now, or do I? Is it Leo? I don't know. But maybe it's Leo. I wouldn't bet my life on it, though. And the idea is that we live in this super connected world. I mean, right now, I'm trying very hard to avoid the news of who's just won the Drivers' World Championship in the Formula 1. And it's difficult to avoid that. And I still don't completely understand what the name of the Pope is. So it seems reasonable that they might not know who the Pharaoh was. So, yeah, I think that seems, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt for that. We then have this very interesting sentence that says, in repentance and rest is your salvation, in quietness and trust is your strength. As repentance obviously makes a lot of sense, and rest actually I think makes quite a lot of sense, but it would seem to make more sense now than it would by then this sort of frantic connected world. So rest and quiet would seem like good ways to not get swept up in crazy things, and maybe that was a thing back then as well. And then trusting God is our strength. I suppose that would make sense when if you were facing an ordeal but you believed and trusted in God that the other side of that was going to be better things, then that would presumably give you some sort of strength. So I quite like it when you get these just little bits dropped in the middle of weirdness, and it's like, yes, okay, that's a really interesting idea. We then have another quote which is very interesting and useful, and that's, the Lord longs to be generous to you, therefore he will rise up to show you compassion. Interesting that I suppose the obvious claim would be that's the rise up is Jesus' resurrection from the dead. Maybe. It's difficult to see what else rising up could be. But I find that is a really interesting thing, is it? Because you get this Old Testament God thing, which is a little bit bleak and all the rest of it. But this is like it's saying he's longing to show people compassion. And I think that does actually tie up with the book of Judges, where you could easily read as God just constantly punishing the Israelites. But actually, if you flip it round and look at it as he's trying to rescue them, they keep mucking it up. So that does sort of make sense, but it's a nice shift in tone, because you keep giving them chances, they keep throwing it in your face, and then people get upset because he's angry at them. And like, fair enough, he's getting angry at them. But it's nice to have it expressed in those terms, when it's mostly for the Old Testament, it is pretty hard going. We then have yet another really interesting quote that has a lot of idea in it. And it said, "The Lord gives you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction." And that seems interesting, because bread and water are obviously vital for life. And it's been linking those with affliction and the other thing, adversity. So my feeling was that the idea is emerging that affliction and adversity are part of life, and important parts of it. That's why there is some of it. But we've never had it stated quite so plainly that it's as important as bread and water for life. So it can be so easy to skip over that idea and miss it. And it does make me wonder how many other ideas I'm just missing, that the light bulb doesn't come on as I read it. But yeah, I really like that. It's really sort of plain speaking, almost. Next bit, chapters 25, sorry, verse 25 and 26. I thought I'd read, actually, just because having my take on it all is that I think I'm making light of quite how weird some of this is. So every now and then I think it's worth just dipping in to give a little bit of an update on just how odd it is. From verse 25, we have, "In the day of great slaughter, when the towers fall, streams of water will flow on every high mountain and every lofty hill. The moon will shine like the sun. The sunlight will be 7 times brighter than the light of 7 full days, when the Lord binds up the bruises of his people and heals the wounds he inflicted." Yeah, so it's just partly just an example of just how weird the Bible is to read. Another part is it's got that idea that he inflicts it. So it does say that God inflicts those, which again seems to tie back up to the idea of the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, or whatever it was. There's just so much in Isaiah that's just really interesting, and huge ideas buried in little sentences. And yes, I do wonder how much I'm missing. Last but not least, though, we have a bit of a description of Judgment Day. And it talks about God coming with burning anger, lips full of wrath, and his tongue a consuming fire, and he will shake the nations in a sieve of destruction. I mean, on the one hand, if we needed any evidence that God speaks metaphorically, then there it is. But yeah, that's pretty full on, isn't it? There's something really, really bad coming, and we can be okay after it, clearly, but it doesn't fill you with a great desire for the future. And perhaps goes some way to answer the question why Christians don't want to die. And that whole idea of, if people are Christians, this is a waiting room, so you just want to get on with it. You can see why people might have some hesitation about that. We shall go on anyway and see what we can find out next.